These Creditors in Commerce workshop sessions, hereinafter sessions, are the private exchange of ideas and concepts between the providers and the recipients. The content is not meant as legal advice. The use or attempted use of any idea or procedure discussed in these sessions, as applied to the recipient's own personal transactions, cases, or controversies, or applied to other cases, may or may not result in a favorable outcome or the same outcome as discussed in these sessions. Each transition or transaction, case, or controversy may be different as a result of unique actions or unique statements made by the parties therein, and each different act or statement in any transaction affects or may affect whether any procedure or idea discussed in these sessions is relevant to the recipient's transactions or that the outcome thereof will be depicted as in these sessions. The discussion of ideas or procedures in these sessions is not exhaustive of the subjects being discussed. Many ideas and concepts that can affect the outcome of any legal or commercial procedure are not discussed in these sessions, and the fact that the recipients may not be aware of these issues may have an adverse effect on the outcome of the recipient's procedures. It is the responsibility of the recipients to understand their own transactions and to apply the appropriate and complete concepts necessary for a procedural and substantive remedy thereto. These sessions may be redistributed privately by any recipient to another recipient requesting them, condition upon the fact that this notice is provided therewith. If you have any questions, you may contact Creditors in Commerce by email at harmony@creditorsincommerce.com.
Alrighty, so we left off. Are we ready? We're good? Okay. So we left off discussing the foundation, the principles and concepts of the come from of the sacred creditor. We were talking about the neutral event and how our beliefs of past events projecting into the future create reaction, which leaves no possibility for creation or creativity. And so now we're going to look at a model of breaking up that old paradigm, that old come from, and be mindful that this is a practice. Just knowing this and what we're about to discuss doesn't mean that, oh, you're fixed and you're not going to react anymore. Okay? I've been doing this for years, and I still react. You want to know the truth of that? Talk to the people closest to me. Okay?
What he's telling you in a simple way also is understand that we've seen the enemy, and it is us. We are our own worst enemy. And we're afflicted with a thing called imprinting and brainwashing, subliminal input, etc. But we've all been imprinted. And that means we've been, it's a learning mechanism operating very early in the life of an animal in which a particular response establishes an irreversible response to the same stimulus in the future. So all our lives, we have been taught to answer questions and respond a certain way, history. And your difficulty is going to be overcoming this data that's been put on your hard drive in your mind. That's where Brandon is telling you he still reacts because we've been taught all our lives to react a certain way to authority, to other people of certain status, our fellow man. Arguing is perfectly okay. Even a lot of people do it with police, etc. But the reality is if you can learn what your problem is, that it's you, and like Brandon understands that his problem is he's still reactive, aren't we all? We still aren't getting it. And you get doses of James Allen and the rest of this on a daily, weekly basis, you start getting what is called a paradigm shift mentally, a pattern or model shift. You start re-imprinting. And we're going to talk about this later in the thing, but we try to teach you to learn to ask questions because you're going to bring resolution to the problem. And it's something we encourage you to do all the time. You can't just do it with police. I encourage people to do it on a daily basis with their relationships. I came in today and I asked somebody, I said, how you doing? He goes, why do you want to know? He's just practicing, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's everything right. Because if you don't start changing the way you think, and this goes on everywhere. I tell a lot of stories about when I go to the bank, and when I put on the back of checks made out to Gordon Hall, I put deposit for credit or exchange for Federal Reserve notes. And I do this at Wells Fargo all the time, and B of A and everybody else, never a problem. And then the other day, 3 months ago, I'm in there and I'm on the telephone, and somebody has got one of my checks, and pretty soon there's 2 more ladies behind there, and they're all looking at the check and talking, looking at me, and I'm saying, I think I better go. There might be a problem here. So I hang up and I said, excuse me, ladies, is there a problem? They said, no, we're just curious why you put this on the check. I says, well, what do you think I'm doing when I deposit a check? Am I not depositing it for credit or exchanging it for Federal Reserve notes? And they go, okay. I said, have a nice day. About a week later, so interesting, at the same bank, a different teller, a foreign gal. She does it, get in the front, she goes, oh, by the way, could you endorse this? And I says, now, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to take on that liability? She just smiled, took the check back, and deposited it. Just a little test. I'm at the restaurant the other day with a student that came in from San Diego. It's a busy restaurant. I go there a little bit early, 15 minutes, 7 minutes later, they call a hall party. Just in front of me is a group of people, and the waitress is saying, so-and-so party. They go, we're here. And she goes, is all your party here? No. Oh, we can't seat you then. So they got to go sit down again because the rest of their party wasn't there. She goes, hall party? I said, right here. My party's not with me yet. So she goes and seats me, and I sit down. And pretty soon, shortly thereafter, along comes a hostess. She goes, is your other party not here? It's like, yeah, man, I thought this was a restaurant. Boy, this is pretty accusatory. I'm feeling, whoa. And I said, what are you going to say? I said, is my other party not allowed to use the restroom? They're not there, but I'm just curious if they're not allowed to. And she goes, oh, excuse me, never mind, it's okay. As soon as she walks away, Faraz, where are you? He says, I'm here. He's across the restaurant. I said, well, okay, there you go. But it's you learn to get in the habit of trying to resolve the problem. And also that when you start doing that, it was so cool because one of our students went in that was in court the other day. This is over a domestic situation. Her soon-to-be ex-husband was in court, and she didn't come on time. So by the time she got there, he'd already been arrested and was gone. So she came in, and as soon as she went in the courtroom, the bailiff says, who are you here for? And she goes, is this not a public hearing? He goes, well, yeah. He goes, well, are you here to see somebody? And she goes, am I required to be here for somebody in particular? He goes, no. She goes, what has happened to Mike Smith? Oh, he was arrested and blah, blah. She goes, well, thank you. She says, he's real nice. But she says, it was nice to be in control. You must learn that you just don't want, and this is everywhere. You go to the supermarket, they say, your zip code, please? I say, what do you need, Mike? Oh, we're just trying to gather some information on our customers and things. And I said, well, are you going to refuse to sell me groceries if I don't give it to you? They go, no, never mind. I said, okay. Because I don't want to get in the habit of answering questions.
Not that he's afraid to give a zip code when buying groceries. He's not coming from a place of fear. You see, that's again about the come from. Did you know that when you put emotion onto something, it attracts it to you? And fear is one of the strongest emotions you have. And when you put fear on something, you draw it towards you. What a situation to create, right? I'm afraid of something, so I actually draw it to me and therefore create it.
In trying to teach you to be a creditor, what I'm trying to get across with these little stories is we need you to try and start changing the way you think on a daily basis in everything you do. Now, my boy, when he was 16, he says, Dad, I want long hair. I just got out of prison. I'm thinking, God, how am I going to deal with this one? If I say no, he's going to be upset. He wants to be a skateboarder. He is a skateboarder. And he wants long hair like his friends. And, of course, if he gets long hair, then he can be smoking. You know, of course, that's what he's going to do. So I'm not going along with that. I said...
That's coming from belief in the past.
Right. That's right. And I says to myself, yeah, you can have long hair. And he brightened right up. I said, just as soon as you start paying the rent, buying your clothes, you know.
A conditional acceptance.
It was a conditional acceptance. And then I went on and said, honey boy, look, what I'm trying to tell you with this is you have obligations as a son and I have duties as a parent. And everything in the world's contract. And I said, as long as you're getting benefits from your mother and her husband or me or this or that, you're on the dole. And when you're on the dole, you have duties and obligations. So I took it as saying he wasn't in the least bit upset with it. Now, we're going to fast forward 2 years, and his dad's asking him, about 3 weeks after New Year's, because I didn't know him real. I said, were you drinking at New Year's? You know, we're like sitting down together, and I said, were you drinking at New Year's? I don't know if my boy drinks. You know, I hadn't asked him before. I said, were you drinking at New Year's? He goes, well, does it matter? Were you drinking at New Year's? Would it really matter, Dad? What's it got to do with anything? I said, I'm just going to ask you one more time. Were you drinking at New Year's? And very humbly and softly says, what difference does it make? And all of the gas went out of me on the third one, and I said, wow. And that's out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. And he wasn't being a smart aleck. He was being very humble. And had he been like, what does it matter? I might have cuffed him. you know, because we've had to decide who's going to be the alpha male in this family. You know, we took care of that real quick. And so, didn't have to touch him, thank goodness. And, but the long and the short is, I could see what an effect it had on me as his father, and I was going, I'm only going to ask you one more time. You know, I'm like, you know, when I'm saying that, it's like, you know, you want me to bring out Mr. Hyde again? You know, as I tell my kids, you want to do this the easy way, or we're going to do it the hard way? Because we're going to do it. You know, and they always go, no, we want to do it the easy way. I said, good, because you're going to have to do it. So let's just get this right. It's all contract. So anyway, the come from, it's interesting to see that affected me. And we want to teach you that this is not something you just go and wait till you get in a confrontation with the post office. Or my good friend who just turned 65 went down on automatic, he's got to renew the driver's license. And they said, we need your Social Security number. He says, well, where's the law that requires me to disclose the Social Security number? He didn't have it all down, but he knew he didn't have to give it. They said, you have to do it. He says, well, where's the law? And so they go back, and 15 minutes later they come out and they show him the law, the Arizona law, and they give him a copy of the law and everything. And he says, I'll tell you what, you sign on this that you're refusing to give me a license for the Social Security number, and I'll be fine with that. So they took it back again because he's not accepting the law. He counteroffered. They went back 20 minutes later, they come out. They crossed, somebody apparently broke the Arizona law and crossed off where he needs Social Security number and initialed it. He didn't have to give it. Because you see, if you don't start taking a stand in the republic, you're going to be part of this thing we call the democracy, and you're not even going to know anything who you are. You'll be so steeped in mob rule and mob understanding and answering that you won't know who am I. I'm me. That's who I am. I might have the name Gordon I use. I might a lot of those things. But our goal is to teach you to do this all the time. And so I encourage my students in some of these things we do. Your friends call you up. Do it sometime. It's really cool. How you doing? Well, how are you doing? Well, I'm great. Well, what have you been doing, Gordon? What have you been doing? Oh, and they'll just go right on. And you never answered their question. It's the coolest thing to see that.
Confession and avoidance.
The confession avoidance is so classic. How you feeling? Well, how are you feeling? And boy, they'll just go on, man, I'm aching it is, and just this litany of complaints. It's beautiful. Because they just want to talk. They didn't really want to hear anything from you. So, but I'm going to tell you, the police are so cool at this. From the IRS arrests, when they come and talk to you, they just keep coming. Confession and avoidance, when you start doing it, I was asked by somebody, any of my kids into this. Well, my daughter went to work for me recently, and she just dumped the boyfriend she has, who she really likes, but he's just this gregarious, happy-go-lucky guy that's going nowhere in his life. He's 22, and he's happy working at a daycare where they don't pay him 3/4 of the time. I think he's been paid $180 since January, but the lady needs help. But he's living with his mother, so why should he worry about his life much? Dad fixed his VW, etc. And she's getting, and Dad's back now, and she just got out of jail from 2 years, so she's actually around Dad, and you can't breed out what she got brought up with younger from just watching and being. And so she's saying, she dumped him, and she goes, all he does is confess and avoid. When she says, well, why don't you do something with your life? Why don't you go get a different job? She says, all he does is confess and avoid. Because I've taught him some of these things. And she says, I said, you're starting to have trouble with those around you, aren't you? She goes, it's bad. Because you see, she's now starting to wake up. We're getting into the definitions of some words. It's real important. Conscious. We're trying to get you to become conscious and know who you are and understand the imprinting you've been afflicted with, because to define a problem is to half solve it. And if you understand that all this time you thought you were Dave, Mary, Johnny, Jim, Gordon, and now you understand that's merely a word or a name, what's your last? Ginger Romano. Before she was a Romano, she was something else. If she married Brandon, she'd all of a sudden tomorrow she'd be an Adams. Is she a Ginger Adams? Is she a Ginger Hall? Is she a Ginger Smith? No, she's her. Now that's a name she might use, but you all have many names. So the long and the short, we want to get you conscious, and it's interesting what Webster says about the word conscious. And we only recommend not very many books you really need. We want you to get James Allen, we want you to get a contract book and a UCC book and a good college edition Webster's Fourth, because it has nice synonyms. I love that one. And there's other ones, but those are your core books. And if you get that in 2 to 6 months of good study, you're really going to be proficient at this. And you're going to be able to start taking care of yourself and helping your friends and helping your neighbors and bringing remedy to what ails you. But I'll just do this last little thing and we'll turn it back to Brandon. Conscious. It's defined in Webster's as awake to one's surroundings and identity. And identity? That's what conscious means? I thought conscious just meant being awake. No, not at all. You're going to learn to read. And Jack's going to talk about a couple of things where we talked in the UCC about reservation of rights, how to kind of read a law book or read anything. Because it's amazing that most people can't read. I didn't say you couldn't say the words and look at, but you can't read. You're really illiterate, believe it or not.
The identity is the Alice, not the other Alice and not almost Alice. And you're lucky if today you're even almost whoever you think you are. You're probably the other person that you don't even understand.
We'll get into that, but identity means it's defined as to make the same. So when a policeman asks, Mr. Adams, give me your name, or where's your ID? He's asking him to make himself the same as a word.
Or as a trust.
As
a public
as
trust.
the trust. Why? Because then when you have given him your property, you have opened an account where pecuniary damages can be lodged, and they will be. You have what's termed entered into a transaction of a security interest. And we'll talk about that later and stuff, but we want to get you all to cease being unconscious. Yes, you're here, but are you conscious? Are you awake to your surroundings and identity? When you leave this seminar, hopefully you will be. That doesn't mean you'll have all the answers, but you'll know right where that road is, you'll know how to get there, and you'll know what it takes. And in a very few short months, it doesn't take years of study like us three have been involved with. You don't need years of study. You will be doing years of study, but to get reasonably proficient, 2 to 6 months with some real effort applied and open-mindedness. In other words, wake up. And my daughter said it. She said, Dad, I'm waking up. Because I refer to it like that. She says, this is getting difficult. I said, I'm telling you. You go around with people and you are literally in an insane society. I said, you ask them questions and they give you an answer that's got nothing to do with what you said. They make excuses, and excuse is a pretext, and a pretext is a false reason or motive put forth to hide the real one. Why didn't you come back in on time? Well, I was already... You didn't come back in on time because you didn't plan it. Simple. I screwed up. How about that? That's all. That's the only reason you weren't on time, because you didn't choose to be on time. Not because I had to go to the bathroom, not because I had to get something to drink, not because I was waiting in line at the front and the teller was busy. That isn't it. So anyway.
The cop did not stop the car for speeding because he was going to charge the Alice. He was stopping the car to bring a charge against the other Alice.
So you mean like the...
Wait a minute, but if the car was speeding, why isn't he bringing the charge against the car?
Because the car really has someone responsible for the operation of the car.
Are you sure?
And the one responsible for the operation of the car is the other Alice, not the Alice. So once again, if you are responding to the law enforcement officer who stopped the automobile that you happen to be sitting in the driver's seat for, you were going under the assumption and presumption he was stopping you. And you assume he was going to charge you, and you had to go into court and pay a fine. When in reality, he was charging the other Alice, which is why the caterpillar said to Alice, we believe you are the other Alice, because when you came down here, you act like the one who's being charged, not the one who is the creditor to set off the charges. If you were the creditor to set off the charges, you would be the Alice, who is the living woman, who is the creditor, but you come down here and act as the other Alice, the one who is guilty of something that has to go out and defend yourself.
Hey, Jack, did you use the example that you used on Monday night about the juvenile? Because I got some new people and they're looking at me like, what's he talking about? But that juvenile really explains how we go in and...
Yeah, how many people have seen Avatar? Ooh, cool.
Wow. Yeah.
Finally, they're going to church. Good.
He's not joking.
Who is Jake?
Now, if you need what we have a written explanation of the movie Avatar with a lot of this. So if you don't have it,
In fact, it's here on.
Get a hold of one of them. I've got it. Jack's got it. If you don't have it, Brandon will give it, and you can get it. It's free, so you can. Going and seeing the movie again after you read that is just so enlightening. But please go on.
Well, what I'll do is also all the documents that we do discuss here this weekend, I'll put up a URL Monday, which you can download.
Tuesday,
everything.
we're going to be here Monday.
Yeah. No, I'm going to put it up on the screen on Monday so that you can write it down and download all the documents that we discuss here this weekend.
How about this 11-page Q&A?
We have so much material for you, like question and answers in situations for IRS, in court this thing, for psychology this. Jack and I have put together, and Brandon has available to him, just tons of the 11-page Q&A that you're speaking of is the 11 pages Jack and I put together when I was first attempting to, after I got out of federal prison, assigned to Gordon Hall was 2 3-year cases of supervised release and $4.8 million of restitution, fines, penalties. Now, I'll have you know that those have been set off. I don't get any hassle from the feds, nothing. I get to do things you can't imagine, nor have I heard from them again, but it was very interesting how it all came about to settle that. But part of that settling and closing that account was, at that time, Jack was working with me on things. If they say this, you say this. So we had 11 pages of questions and answers that they might ask, and I would respond in a certain way. Now, those are just for reference, because the way we handle things today, and we didn't have a good handle on it today, I would go in there and I'd be out of there in like 3 or 4 minutes, and it would be done in no more than 3 hearings. And so instead of 14 hearings and a couple of contempt charges, I got it done, but I had to feel my way, and let me tell you, it was exhilarating, to say the least. You know, I could go to jail for 6 years. Oh my gosh! And we didn't know how at that time to get right down to the crux of it, simplify it. I'm trying to memorize pages and pages, and you know, when you hear Jack give you this and that, and this is going to be a thrill. And I have a great ability to memorize, but man, you know, that's all I did from the time I woke up to the time I go to bed. You know, memorize, listen, do this, and that's about all we do anyway. But nonetheless, it's 11 pages of neat stuff, and we have lots of those that we can give you free that will allow you to start getting what we term a repertoire of conditional acceptances in certain situations, till pretty soon it won't matter anymore to you. You'll be able to create your own, because you now know what's happening, and you don't have a fear because you know who you are. You're not bound by history any longer, and you'll know the procedure to get you your remedy, whether you're stopped by a policeman, whether you're stopped walking down the sidewalk, and what you might do in all sorts of situations, because understand, they can read. Policemen are experts at people. That's what they do all day. Many of you have a field, like some of you might be a seamstress, some of you might be mortgage brokers, but you can look at something in your field, or if you're like a basketball player, the minute you get on the court with somebody who says they play hoops, you know just like that in like 30, 60 seconds whether you're dealing with a guy that's got any skills or he's reasonably skilled or not. And this goes with any. You get out there on a racquetball court with a guy after just a couple of volleys, you know if you're dealing with a lightweight A, B, or C player, you know, or F player. You know what you're dealing with. And when a policeman and judges deal with you, they know in about 5 or 10 seconds, the minute you open your mouth, they know what they're dealing with. So you can picture that when you come into court, and you might come in, I'm here today, as in, and how you might say it. The judge can read his body language like that. And so they might come in, and I might say, if Jack will come on in, I'm the judge, I'm going to call the case. We'll just do a short one. The case is Jack Smith versus United States of America. Prosecutor Brandon Adams here on behalf of the state. Is Mr. Smith in the courtroom?
Your Honor, let the record show that I am the authorized representative for the secured party creditor with an interest in the defendant here today. Just refer to me as the defendant, Leslie Jack Smith, hereafter, sir. Thank you.
This is not the usual defendant in my courtroom. I'm going to tell you, I know what this guy said because I'm a contract expert. And
if that judge was any good, I wouldn't have got more than about 5 words out of my mouth. Why? Because he knows who I'm saying I am, and he doesn't want you people to hear that.
Now, I've been there also. They don't mind that either. I've been where I say, I'm here today, blah, 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 blah. If it please the court, may I enter the bar under said terms and conditions? They'll let you finish your statement. Sometimes they'll cut you off. It's a cool game. It's never the same. But once you get the basics down, it doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter how he threatens you. You know exactly what's going on. So the judge says something. And in my case, I said, if it please the court, may I enter the bar under said terms and conditions? And the judge just left me standing out in the gallery and we had court. Because I'm on the private side and wasn't entering that bar coming into his jurisdiction. And Mr. Smith just now, I didn't say defendant Smith, I asked if Mr. Smith's in the courtroom, and he gets up and he says, Mr. Smith's not in the courtroom, but the dude that owns Mr. Smith's in the courtroom, and you got a claim against him. I know exactly what he said because I speak law. Excuse me, are you the defendant?
Your Honor, let the record show I am the defendant, as so stated a minute ago. Just like scriptures say, agree with thine adversary quickly, whilst thou art in the way with him.
Your Honor, I'm here as the defendant, in the capacity of.
See, definitions are critical. Remember when they were accusing our President Clinton, and he went on and on about the definition of the word is? I just redefined defendant. If you know who a defendant is, it's a corporation owned by the government in which they want you to associate yourself so they can pass liability on to you. So when the judge says, is Mr. Smith in the courtroom today? You go, yes, Your Honor. You're going to prison. The case is over. It's done. There's no need for a trial, but because we don't want to educate you on what's going on, we'll hold a trial for the next 4 years, then send you to prison. Your case was terminated when you answered to the question, is the defendant corporation with a liability to the government here today? Here I am, Your Honor. Peg it to me. That's what you're doing. Is everybody in prison there by voluntary consent? Yes. You bet. When did you volunteer? When you answered the roll call.
You're going to learn how to deal with some of these things. We're going to have some mock court. We're going to have a little fun. And some of you are going to get a play. So you're going to have a lot of fun.
We've got another question, but we got one on the board here that we haven't answered yet. But, sir, put your input in.
I just wondered, had anybody seen that video that's been going around lately with that English fellow?
Yes.
When he was asked.
The video with the English fellow.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of arguing. He was successful on it. I would just counsel you to, there's ways to handle it. I'm going to tell you right now, in some of the American courts, you do what he did, you can rest assured that there won't be the same result as he got. Because he is arguing. He's making statements right and left. We're going to teach you. This is such a cool game. It's all about contracts. It's all about this. It's really simply, you got 4 doors with every single offer. You can do a simple acceptance, straight acceptance. You can do a conditional acceptance. That's door 2. Those are both in honor. And you're a creditor, and you will always, always win.
If you can keep that position. Because the game's dynamic. It keeps going on.
Door 3 is silence. And we know that silence can only be equated with fraud where there is a legal or moral duty to respond or where an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. That's in United States versus Pruden. But silence is fraud, ladies and gentlemen. And I know that the Constitution gave you the right to plead the Fifth Amendment.
Well, you have the right to remain silent, and if you exercise that right in Admiralty Maritime equity, silence equates with confession, which means you're guilty. So anytime you exercise the right to remain silent, you've just agreed that I'm guilty and liable, put me in prison, let me pay the bill. So people that believe the adage that silence is your right, that's true in the Republic. Their courts are operating in a democracy. It's a mirror image. In their court, you're guilty unless you prove yourself innocent. So remain silent, and you're going straight to jail. You're going straight to a loss. And the fourth?
And your 4th door is argue. And people say, well, I didn't argue. Under argument, you can go look up argument. The Webster's will tell you it's fighting says arguing. Arguing says reasoning. Reasoning says explaining. Explaining says justifying. Syllogistically, if A equals B and B equals C and C equals D, then A equals B, A equals C, A equals D. They're all interchangeable.
Do not argue the facts. Do not argue the law. Do not argue the jurisdiction of the tribunal. Every one of those is a guaranteed loss.
And we'll have some neat stories about it. So you just got 4 doors. That's how easy this game is. 4 doors with any time somebody makes you an offer. Policeman pulls you over. You get a court summons. Your neighbor wants to know what's going on. Can he borrow your mower? These are all offers. I love the way the guys in the prison are doing things now. Do you want to lend me some batteries? I'd look at him and say, no. What do you mean, do I want to lend you some batteries? What happened to, could I borrow some batteries, please? It's like, I don't know where they learned this, but God, it's kind of interesting. Do you want to lend me your radio? No, I don't want to lend you my radio. You might break it. Jeez. We're getting people fouled. It's getting interesting. They're going to have 4 doors. It's going to get simple. You're going to learn and stick with this stuff. you had a question?
A brief response, because there's still one on the table.
Yeah,
The
and
concept-
actually, I want to address that one.
The
as well.
concept about the juvenile, okay? And we went to Avatar. There's a lot to explain in Avatar, but we got it in writing. We're not going to take the time here. But there's a very important lesson in there, because if you understand Jake came as a replacement for his brother on a scientific mission. The scientific mission is just about the study of facts. Facts are neutral. They're not plus, they're not minus, they're not good, they're not bad. But you see, Jake replaced his brother. His brother was a scientist. What was Jake? Military. Military is involved in adversarial warfare, the opposite of going to peace. And so Jake came with that background, and the military contingent on this moon, Pandora, wanted Jake to be a spy for the military in this operation. Well, what was the operation there for? Well, planet Earth was a dying commercial zone. And they went to Pandora for one purpose. There was substance of immense value on Pandora. And they went there to mine that substance and take that back to planet Earth to rejuvenate a dying commercial economy. Why is it a dying economy? Because it's only based on the liability side of the books and records. Nobody ever exposed the asset side. So they're up there to get this mineral, which is called unobtainium. You can't obtain the wealth you think you're going for just by going after a thing. Because thing does not do anything. It's the human introduction of energy to anything which creates whatever it is you're looking for. So just going after a thing is not going to give you wealth unless it's used wisely by the people that have this. So Jake is up there and he's part of a scientific mission to do what? To try to make peace with the inhabitants on that moon. Why do they have to make peace with them? Because they're coming there to take their wealth away from them and extract it from their world and take it back to planet Earth. Now, if you're going to take wealth from these people, this indigenous population, are you going to exchange equal value with that civilization and give them something in return? Not. You know, this whole movie, isn't it a pattern of what the Western civilizations did back in the 15, 16, 1700s when they set out this colonization for the purpose of extracting wealth from the new worlds so that they could bring it back to a dying economy from the Western civs in Europe. And they always sent three entities whenever they went. They sent the priests, because we're going to convert the population and send them to heaven. Not. What was their real purpose? To gain the confidence so that we can extract their wealth with them not getting angry at us. Well, if they get angry, we don't care if they get angry. Just don't go to war against us. Why don't they want them to go to war against? Because it raises the costs of the expedition. And it lowers the profit. So we got to keep them in a state of peace. So the priests are there not to teach spirituality. The priests are there to subdue the indigenous population so we can steal from them. Isn't that what Christians do? Lie, steal, and cheat? As a religion? Okay, so they sent the priests, and the priests are plan A. Find out who they are, find out what makes them tick, and then get them to agree with us. If that doesn't work, what's plan B? The military went on the voyage to protect the priests. But if the priests can't accomplish the job with lowering the costs of the mission, then plan B is to send in the military to subdue the indigenous population and extract the wealth under duress. Who's in control of the mission? The guy who was the commercial head, who was hired by whoever financed the voyage, expecting a return in profit on the mission. So on the planet up there, who is in charge of this whole operation? The one dude who represented the corporation seeking the profits from mining and returning unobtainium back to planet Earth. Now, instead of sending a priest up there, we know in modern society today, we can't be teaching about spirituality and religion because that's not scientific and nobody can prove that. So instead of using the priests in this story of Avatar, they have substituted the scientists, because we all know that everything they say absolutely is based on true fact.
That's fact.
Fact. Even when the world's heating up, it's true fact. It has nothing to do anymore with this mumbo-jumbo beliefs that can't be proved.
It heated up a lot more when it was flat, but...
That's true. Okay? So you notice that what Cameron is really explaining to you is our history, in order that you try to see what it is that your belief patterns and everything have constrained you to try to believe what the public wants you to think and understand. Now, Jake goes up there, and Jake is the perfect person to follow on this journey, because does Jake care about the wealth that they're mining? No. Does he even care about doing the job of being the scientist? No. He's ex-military. He knows nothing about being a scientist. Why is Jake up there? He just wants to make enough money that when he gets back to planet Earth, he's going to have a savings so they can operate on his back and he can walk again. So Jake has no altruistic reason to be up there on Pandora. It's all about me, Jake. When he gets to Pandora, what has his mind been imprinted to believe? That the civilization coming from Earth is smart, intelligent, and it's there to save the universe. We are the smartest people around. What does Jake believe about the indigenous population? Oh, they're prehistoric. They know nothing. They're way behind in terms of technology. Why, those people are just ignorant idiots. What was Jake placed on Pandora to act in the capacity of? He went there as a man. He was put into a costume. The costume was called an avatar. What is the definition of an avatar? It is a messenger sent from the gods to another indigenous population. Mankind was so egotistical, we're going to dress up to look like you so we can bring everything that you need to understand. We're going to imprint on you people what you need to know so you can be brilliant like us gods. When Jake was operating in the capacity of the avatar, Jake wasn't even in the avatar. Jake was in a unit back at the headquarters of mankind. Didn't that unit look like a coffin? Didn't he get enclosed in a unit that looked like he was dead? And he only came to life through the body of that avatar that looked alive. But wherever that body was, it was just a representative, a mask of Jake who wasn't there. And when Jake would open up the coffin and get out, the body of the avatar would slump down like it's in a sleep. There's no life there. It's not animated. When he was trapped out in the society, he ran across problems and he could have been killed. But this native woman, Natiri, rescued him. And he was so thankful, he said to the woman, "Let me follow you." And what did she say to him? "No, I don't want you to follow me." And he said, "Why?"
Like a child.
Because you are like a child. You don't know what you're doing. You're not responsible. You have caused all of this havoc. There are nature animals dead. There are things going on here, and it's your fault because you're ignorant. You don't know how to relate with your surroundings, the universe. Who is it that was in a more advanced civilization? It was the Navi from this moon Pandora. It wasn't the ignorant people coming from Earth with the attitude that we're superior to you and we're here to gather up all this ultimatum or whatever the hell it is.
Ultimatum.
What we're here to do is we're here to charge our brothers and steal your wealth. We're not here to help you. Isn't that the pattern that most of us see our government as today? They're not here to help us. They're here to cause us trouble. Isn't that what we see?
Based on our beliefs and
That's
past.
on our beliefs. But it's because we have been acting like this colonization of Pandora. We have been going about our lives as children, not grown up, not understanding responsibility, not knowing who we are. And so we get treated in like kind to who we believe we are and how we ought to act. The reason your children are children is because they don't know enough to be responsible. And so, do they have ultimate rights? No. Their parents tell them what they can and can't do. The reason is they're children, they're not responsible. Because you're not responsible, you cannot be given the liberties, the benefits and the privileges of being an adult, one who is responsible. It was the same thing in Avatar. The journey took Jake from being in the military, and who cares about anything except myself, to learning about what is the lessons of law, commerce, and nature going on in Pandora, and who is responsible and in the right, and who is irresponsible in the wrong. And Jake eventually moves from the body of human, which is unresponsible, to the transfer of his soul life and his spirit intelligence into the body of the Navi, because it was a higher life form. The Navi were creditors. The humans were debtors. The humans were put on their vessels and sent off of Pandora to return to their dying world, which is where debtors go. So Jake made the transformation. Are you ready to make the transformation from operating in your body as a debtor to understanding who you are as a creditor? Because that whole story was basically the remedy that we're here to present this weekend. And Cameron showed you all about that in a movie called Avatar. Stop thinking that you're a god in control of everything and you can do what you want. We are all subject to the laws.
It's said you have at the beginning of the crack in the code, because we're going to try and get you to govern yourselves. Theodore Roosevelt in 1907 at the opening of the Jamestown Exposition, April 26, said this, and it's still alive today. The Republic has been indicated. And picture this is a over 100-year-old statement. Is it not as apropos then as it, if not even more so today? He said thus, "We of this mighty Western Republic have to grapple with the dangers that spring from popular self-government tried on a scale incomparably vaster than ever before in the history of mankind, and from an abounding material prosperity greater also than anything which the world has hitherto seen. As regards the first set of dangers, it behooves us to remember that man can never escape being governed. Either he must govern himself or submit to being governed by others. If from lawlessness or fickleness, from folly or self-indulgence, he refuses to govern himself, then most assuredly, in the end, he will have to be governed from the outside. They can prevent the need of government from without only by showing they possess the power of government from within. A sovereign cannot make excuses for his failures. A sovereign must accept the responsibility for the exercise of power that inheres in him. And whereas is true in our republic, the people are sovereign, then the people must show a sober understanding and a sane and steadfast purpose if they are to preserve that orderly liberty upon which, as a foundation, every republic must rest. Jack and Brandon will tell you as I will, this is a perfect government. Perfect being defined not only as flawless, which is not the way I'm using it, but complete and whole is another definition for perfect. This is a complete and whole government that we deal with out here. The republic is available to you that wish to govern yourselves and become conscious and learn who you are and the procedures for implementing and sustaining your position. Over here is the democracy, the sovereigns that have chosen it. That means all of you are sovereign. You are all authority. Sovereign means authority. So you're all the authority. Every one of you go out and make law. And you choose the law you want to be under. It has been said, all law emanates from contract or agreement. Therefore, law is contract and contract is law. Or stated another way, contract equals law and law equals contract. We encourage you that every time you see the word law, substitute contract and see if it doesn't make more sense. Policeman pulls you over, you broke the law. What he just said is you broke the contract. What contract? License and registration, please. You give them the license, that's prima facie evidence you're in a contract, as well as you just identified yourself.
But who's in the contract, the other Alice or the Alice?
Yeah, whichever one you decide. Give him the license, give him the registration. He's going to make you an offer on a piece of paper. What are you going to do with it? Well, some people are just going to sign it, and some people are going to A for B it, and some people are going to sign it and without prejudice. But there's all sorts of things you're going to learn to do and what it has and the effect of it. But nonetheless, govern yourself or be done for you and understand law. Consent makes the law. You are the law. You make contract. There's a very famous Supreme Court case, Yick Woe versus Hopkins. Sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to law, for it is the author and source of law. Contract. It is not subject to contract. Authority is not subject to contract because it's the author and source of authority or contract. What a cool thing. And do they hide any of this from you? No, they have come out so much to tell you about this in the movies, in the radio. Many of you remember, I don't know, what was the artist that sang all the crap I learned in high school, it's a wonder I can think it all? Huh?
Simon and Garfunkel?
Simon, yes.
You're presuming I'm as old as you.
Yeah, I assumed that you had some variety in your life.
I have variety. I just don't have a record player.
All right. I give up.
He got his on the 8-track tape.
Then I did have a record player and an 8-track, so. But they've been telling us, and John Mayer sings Between the White Lines, all the songs, the movies, the court cases. Here's a court case that's off the charts. This judge said this: few, if any, intelligent and well-educated, this is talking about it, few, if any, intelligent and well-educated laymen are schooled in the science of law. Science of what? Contract. And if charged with a crime, are capable of determining for themselves whether the indictment is good or bad. They are unfamiliar with the rules of evidence, lacking both the skill and knowledge to adequately prepare their defense, even though they may have a perfect one. What's more perfect than it is in you, babe? They require the guiding hands of counsel at every step of the proceeding. Though they be not guilty, they face the danger of conviction because they do not know how to establish their innocence. If this be true of a man of intelligence, how much more true it is of those without adequate schooling and experience. They don't hide anything. This government is perfect, and they will honor you and reflect your attitude when you honor and reflect them. And we're going to get into that later more, but this is such an exciting time to live because the keys and the answers are here for you. How to handle, I don't care what indictment it is, it can be made to go away or discharged lawfully, legally, and ethically. I have in my briefcase a little, most people are surprised, Encyclopedia Britannica, a little thing on the IRS. The IRS administers a tax system based on voluntary cooperation. And like Jack said, Robert Borg, a recent Supreme Court nominee, everybody in jail is there because they volunteered. That's hard to believe until you understand what law is and how it affects you. And we're going to get into that later into this stuff. Hopefully you'll come out of here with remedies and so much excitement. And understand reality is going to set in and you don't know how to handle it exactly. But this is why you're going to study, get your paradigm shift, and understand how to deal with it. And you practice it in your everyday life, it's going to start coming naturally to you just the way arguing and denial does and confession and avoidance does. It just comes naturally because you've been imprinted that way. We're going to work on that hard drive. Brandon?
In Avatar, the Navi called the Earthlings dream walkers. Fictional people that are animated. It's like cartoons. But you see, today, because of television and movies, our younger generation has grown up looking at cartoonish people as though they're real. And in the minds of most people, including adults today, they have no idea where the separation is between reality and fiction. It's all blended together. But they called the Earthlings dreamwalkers. And the shaman called the avatars sky people. Does a sky person set his foot on the soil, or is he off the ground all the time? You see, the common law is based upon walking on the land. And if you're referred to as a sky person, what is the difference in definition between Georgia and the state of Georgia? Isn't the description of Georgia the metes and bounds? In the northwest at this location, to the northeast here and along the ocean and down to, that's the description.
He's telling you that Georgia has two constitutions. One that's going to have metes and bounds describing Georgia, and one that's...
State of Georgia, how is it defined? All the area above the land and the water of Georgia. The state of Georgia, you must be the sky people. You're not standing on the soil.
You're not grounded.
What's the difference? You got to be grounded on the soil to be in the republic. The democracy is the sky people. They never put their feet on the ground. They must be dream walkers. Because we know real people are stuck by the principle of gravity and have to have their feet in the ground. Not the other Alice. She is a sky people. You're contracting your life away, playing the role of the sky people, not the role of the people grounded on the soil. So consequently, you fall under a different definition of government. And the contracts in that other world for the sky people are not the same contracts with rights, benefits, and privileges of the people that walk on the soil. When it came to Jake, what was his initial dream? Why was he involved in the operation? To get his legs back by saving up a salary, working for the military, going back to planet Earth and having an operation. At some point in Jake's existence on Pandora, he changed his program. He was no longer oriented toward just taking the money to go back and get his ability to walk back by an operation on planet Earth. Let me ask you a question. When the story was over, was Jake able to manifest walking around with perfect freedom as far as the body that he existed in? Yeah. Did he have to pay for an operation to get his mobility back? No. Was he concerned about getting his mobility back when he changed his objectives, which was to work in allegiance to the earthling military, to instead go over and assist the Navi in maintaining their liberty and freedom? Was his mobility in his legs the issue? No. But in the end, because he did something to solve someone else's problem, it wasn't his problem he was working on. He decided to help someone else solve their need. Was he acting like a creditor then? You bet. And how did he get his remedy? Did he say, well, I'm going to go help them and then I'm going to be able to walk? No, that wasn't in his future. He didn't see that coming. But what happened to him when he ended up? Because he solved some other problem, didn't he end up as the ruler of that clan? He was a mighty person. He was sovereign. He ruled the Navi.
And he got his magic legs.
And he got the legs.
And he got the girl.
And he got the girl. And he was praised by everyone. And no one on the planet charged him because he was a creditor and helped everyone. Sometimes you've got to watch that what it is that you're looking for is going to come to you, but not in the way you think. You got to stop thinking like, I got to solve my problem. If you solve someone else's problem, yours will take care of itself.
Cause and effect rules the universe. Everything you do causes an effect. Do you really believe that you can be involved in negative activities, backbiting, whining, reviling, drug taking, this, that, the other thing, and not pay the price? Of course not. You're not that silly. You know that pays the kind of dividends it pays. If you do nothing wholesome, you eat crap all the time and take drugs and drink and don't work, and you do nothing. You know that the result from it is guaranteed ill health, et cetera, unhappiness.
Watch it. You know I like McDonald's.
Conversely, what he's telling you, you're not going to not be rewarded for doing all sorts of good and trying to solve other people's problems. Cause and effect works the same way in the opposite direction. You will be rewarded for trying to solve others' problems. Initially, you're going to be doing this generally for self-aggrandizement and fixing your problem. But after a while, it will become a habit. You will do it to solve the other person's problem. And even if back here you're doing it to solve yours, which we do, it's okay. But try to get your mind around some real love for your brothers and sisters, including, and a lot of people think we're joking about this government being perfect, or we love the IRS, we like these people. Is the IRS got a civil action against Brandon?
Still love them.
Is the IRS dealing with me? Yeah, we love these guys. We absolutely do. We don't have any animosity at all. We are grateful for this government because we wouldn't have a perfect government were they not to follow the law. And I promise you, they always follow the contract. Which contract? Well, it depends on who you are. So that's what you're going to be learning here also this week. It's going to get simpler and simpler. We're kind of talking a lot of esoteric concepts and principles, but it'll come together and we'll distill it down into a little more simple understanding and some ideas on how you get your remedy. And with a little bit of study, and we'll be giving you stuff like there's a site on the internet, Arizona State Senator Wayne Stump. He talks about dual citizenship and traveling without licenses and plates, this is a state senator from Arizona. I got some great stuff when he was in office. He's not in office now, but he's got that website. You got to go to it. Open your mind. The world's yours. Brandon?
Okay. Wayne Stump.
Wayne Stump, S-T-U-M-P, Arizona State Senator Wayne Stump. Google it, it'll come right up. And he talks about 14th Amendment citizenship. I mean, this is a senator, ladies and gentlemen. He talks about, where do you see the stuff about he talks about? It's like you're going, this is a senator? But why doesn't they talk more about it? They do, but people don't want to hear this stuff. They really don't. I was working with a student in Florida recently, a young man who's going to be sentenced to 11 years on the 17th. He says, can anything be done? I said, yes. Blah, 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 blah. Gave him a little rundown. I said, and to be successful, you're not going to have to go to jail. I need you to simply do a little, help me help you. I said, I'm going to need you to do a little bit of reading. We'll make up some flashcards, and when you go into court, you're going to have to say a few things, but it won't be difficult. I really minimized it because I could sense his fear and trepidation. And it could be that simple. Long and the short is, nah, I'll just try it next time. I'm just going to go to jail for 11 years and try it next time. I determined that his educational level is such that, I hate to say it, but I don't think he could read. And I think that shook him up. And instead of saying something, didn't want anything to do with it. Now we say, oh, come on, that didn't make sense. And I was talking to some of you out here earlier. I got on the elevator last night, and there's a young couple dressed to the nines. I don't know where, boy, these two ought to be in a fashion show. And they're just standing in the elevator. And I press my button. And they go, do you know where 903 is? And it dawned on me, they didn't know how to push the button for the 9th floor. And I said, all I did was feel bad for them because either they've never traveled in an elevator before, which is kind of interesting. But nonetheless, even watching movies, they never even picked up that you push a button. When the front desk told them, yeah, it's on 903. And they were just standing waiting in the elevator to somebody come along. Because I could see walking up the door, which door was open. I was going to say, I got to catch it. They never pushed a button. They just went in and stood. Now, that doesn't mean they're stupid. It just means they lack some experience there. And all I felt was, oh, my goodness. These poor kids are going to really have an interesting future with this level of what appears to be lack. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just an unfamiliarity with elevators, but that's kind of basic to me, and maybe I'm out of line. But nonetheless, it's okay if you don't know things. You can overcome it, what I'm telling you. Please. This is not going to take you that much to get there. It is going to take that you have decided that you want to get there, and in 2 to 6 short months with some good effort, at least a couple, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, at least 3, 4, 5 days a week, and some practice. Well, I don't have time. I had one gal, she says, I just don't have time. I said, what do you do all the time? She says, I'm 9 hours a day in the car. I said, have you heard of MP3 player? She says, that's a good idea. She really didn't think of it. I said, yeah, you could just put this stuff on. You got 9 hours of classroom a day. What a beautiful thing. When you think you can do it, all of you can do it. You really, really can. And if you want to live, you can. If not, hey, just go back to your dying world, because democracy's always in there. Republic's always in enlightenment, happiness, progressiveness.
You can always give up living and just go right back to survival.
The reason we spend all our time on this is just ask Gordon. We will spend weeks, sometimes months, with people showing them the remedies and the tools. And when it gets down to where the rubber meets the road, they just cave it in. Why?
Like
Because
he's talking about this young man with the 11 years. He's going to go on him up. It's the wildest thing I've ever seen. We have clients get right to the door, and they turn and walk away.
they open the door and they see success, and they draw right out of the mouth of success failure. We've all been programmed to live with failure. People have not been programmed to live with success. You feel guilty about living with success. So there's two things. Your mindset is one of the biggest obstacles we have to helping you out. Because even when we get you that close and you see that that's a likelihood it's going to work, something about your being, this mindset that we've been talking about this morning, you go, well, nobody else thinks that way. There must be something wrong. I'm not going to do it. So what happens is you lack faith, or as they said in The Wizard of Oz, the lion has no courage.
We have our students, it's the wildest thing you've ever seen. They go into court hearing after court hearing telling them what to do, and they come out winners. Crazy stuff. We have a bankruptcy gal. She goes in there. She took money out of her accounts afterwards, didn't report other assets that she had free and clear over here. She was just a nut. The judge says, does your client know she's facing criminal charges? She said this to a couple of times. We finally, what are you doing? Well, I'm taking money out. I said, that's criminal. You're going to jail.
But I got to eat.
She goes, I got to eat, and my daughter needed some money. And I said, it's not your money.
Your attorney told her, go on welfare. She had $380,000 in bank accounts, and she had unsecured loan of $70,000. But the court had a hold on all of her assets. She couldn't touch them. And she goes, but I got to eat. I'm just going to take out $10,000, $20,000 here. We said, lady, do you understand that you're going to jail? So I finally said, if nothing else, write out a promissory note and give it to the trustee, which she did, and then that blew everybody's mind, and they're starting testing her to see what she knew. But by giving him a promissory note after she took funds out of the bank, it's no longer theft because I've compensated you.
It's an
Now,
exchange.
You got to understand that you're the creditor, though, and can do that, because if you don't realize you're the creditor that can do that, it ain't going to work.
The judge had warned her attorney a couple of times. Does your client know what she's going and getting in trouble? And Jack gave her the advice. He says, look, we'll just put a promissory note in. She saw that work. She saw other stuff work. We tell them that the government always does it right, and if you're not getting your remedy, it's something you're doing. And then we're dealing with her again yesterday on silliness. She got a thing, and
Doubting Jane.
I said, beautiful, good news. She says, how's that good news? I said, I don't know, maybe just the sky's falling.
The judge told her to stop filing things with the clerk. And she's going, there you go. They took my remedy away. We said, look, lady, you're on the private side. You've got to keep your filings out of the public or you're going to destroy your remedy. Oh, no, they're not letting me file. They're going to do something evil to me. Lady, they're giving you their remedy.
The judge said in the order, we got her with this. You were to send it to me. He's just coming out, hey, you're on the private side. You send it to me from now on. You're not allowed to do it there. If you do it, we're going to arrest you. He wants to see her succeed, and she looks at it negative, and Jack and I are going, oh, my gosh, this is so beautiful.
There's your mindset again.
The judge is saying, I'm going to see to it you get there. Now, you're not going to file anymore in the public. You send it to me. And she thinks that's a negative, and the party's over again. Sky's falling.
The thing that you've got to understand, how many people have ever filed a counterclaim or a pleading in a court and got a judge's order back that looked like it was against them? Nobody ever lost a court case here? Do you know how to read judgments? Because most of the time when somebody gets something back from the judge, they keep coming up to me go, oh man, that didn't work. Oh, look, I lost. And I go, well, this is the best damn news I've ever seen. What makes you think you lost? Well, look at there. I said, it's not what they're saying. It's what they're not saying. What they are not telling you on that order is screaming that you won that hearing. Why are you paying attention to what they said? What they said was to induce you to what? get an emotional response. What has Brandon been talking to you about this morning before we interrupted him? That was an hour and a half ago.
They forgot.
I didn't forget.
So, how many are interested in breaking the cycle of reaction? Okay? So, what we can do is you've heard a couple of examples. You have a question?
One question. To go back to the court scenario, if the judge calls the all caps name instead of
Well, let's save this for the court sessions because we're going to
do those.
We're going to do a lot of court stuff, and we should group it all together so that when you guys go back to the materials, you don't want to have to watch 3 days worth of our blabbering to find the information you're looking for. So I like to keep it sectioned off into specific groupings so that all the information about a particular topic can be found on 2 DVDs rather than you're going to have to watch 18 DVDs to find what you're looking for.
And we're going to be training you in these first sessions here so that when we start playing court, believe me, everything that we're telling you right now in terms of principles and ideas are going to come into what you see in the court playing role. So when you're charged and you get up here and have to answer to the prosecutor and the judge, remember the principles we're teaching you here, because all of those are going to come into that role playing, and you're going to have to remember, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing to get a remedy?
Absolutely. So we've had a couple of examples where, like Gordon's example with Leslie and the bank and a call every hour, 8 hours a day. And we showed how Leslie herself was stuck in a reactionary mode. And how Gordon was able to create a solution. He was not stuck in a reactionary mode. He was not stuck in his past and beliefs about things. He was not stuck in assumptions and presumptions. So, in order to have creative power in creating a solution, where are we coming from as opposed to our past and future? The present. It's a principle, it's a concept, being present. Being in the now, meaning I'm going to be present with what's being said by the other side. I'm not going to make up anything about what they're saying. I'm just going to be present with it and ask questions, create from being present.
How can I help you solve your problem?
Right. I'm not under the assumption, presumption, or belief that I have a problem. I'm in the now. I'm being present. To stop this reaction, we need to be mindful that we do it, that there's a story that runs us based on neutral events. So literally, we have to stop it. For instance, what's a good everyday reaction? Somebody says something, let's say, not necessarily accusatory.
Let's do something even more dramatic. I'm sitting here in prison.
Right.
What is your reaction? Why did they charge me? Why did they convict me? Why am I guilty? No, logic says I'm in the present. You know, I must be here because I'm here to solve their problem. What is their problem, and is there another solution so that if I solve their problem, I don't have to be sitting here?
Absolutely. That's, again, not coming from a past belief about why you're here, but looking to unlimited possibilities, being in the question of it. So we need to stop our reaction, question our situation before and be present with it before we can, rather than react, we can create by choosing our solution.
Let me give an example. We had a gal out of Arizona that was in prison for 27 months on a contempt charge, and she had no out date. So I took her case on. And she had a situation going with the IRS where they wanted certain books, records, and bank statements that did not exist anymore. They were destroyed in a flood or whatever, but they didn't exist. So she's in jail for 27 months already.
And every time she's being questioned about this, what's she doing? Arguing. She's coming from the belief. She's reacting to the IRS.
They're saying, where are the records? And she goes, I don't have them. They got destroyed in the flood. You know what? There's affidavits. That's the truth. She kept doing just like Leslie did. I'm not on the loan. So I took over the case, and we put in that we are now wanted to purge our contempt, etc., and did some paperwork. And she was going to be called into an IRS hearing. I told her, you're going to be called into a hearing. She says, what do I say? Because every time I do, because they call her in real regularly, giving her a chance to get out of jail. But she's going to be there for life. You can be there for life on contempt. She's over 2 years and no out date, never getting out. And they keep saying, where's the records? And she says, I don't have them. I told you, I can't give you something I don't have.
But see, on the other end comes the mental condition. I don't want to give them the data because it's going to incriminate me and they're going to come after me for taxes. And so under the Constitution, I don't have to provide these records. So, I mean, that's what's going on in the back of her mind. She's thinking, you know, I'm in jail right now for 27 months and I don't want to be here, but it could be worse. If I do what they want me to do, then I might be here for 15 years.
So I'm talking to her and she says, what do I say? I says, you're going to have a new mantra. How can I help you now? Because what am I going to say? Where's the records? How can I help you now? That was her mantra. That means, I said, almost no, whenever they bring that up, just say, how can I help you now? She goes to an IRS hearing.
If she's asking the question, how can I help you now? Is she taking a position? Is she making a statement? Is she arguing? No.
Is it about her needs or is it about helping someone else?
She stopped that reaction of needing to be right. How many people need to be right?
Now she couldn't get over the fact, but see, her boyfriend's very prolific writer, so that she said, we've put in like 200 filings to get out and I can't. And she would get on the phone and argue with me all the time. I said, look, I don't care what you do. You just do what I tell you to do and nothing else. Do not deviate. Do you understand me? I said, and I used some choice words with her because she's a prison gal. So I said, look, I love you, but you just frustrating me. I says, quit arguing. That's you. I said, I don't care what you do. You just do exactly what I tell you to say.
And you know how often we experience that? We're out there wanting to support people and assist people and coach people, and they're arguing with us. What chance, what hope do they have if the people who are here to help them, they're arguing with them? I see that more often than anything. Mm-hmm. They argue with us. What chance, what hope can they have against IRS agent or a judge if they can't get along with the people who are there to help them?
So she goes to the IRS hearing, and they want information. Then I said, you answer every question to the best of your ability. Well, you say be a creditor. I said, I told you, just do exactly what I tell you to do. You just act like a debtor. And a sycophantic one at that. Leg ride, hop on their leg. Just start being what you're supposed to do. So she goes to the court hearing. Like it's 10 days later. This is really nice. And the IRS wants to know, how can I help you now? Well, what about this bank account? She goes, yeah, I had one there. Wherever she could answer the question. And the long and the short is she goes a thing, and pretty soon they come out and they give this 3-page thing that she should be stayed locked up. She didn't cooperate, didn't give any records, and didn't even give us any information from Global Bank out of the Bahamas. Nor did she make any effort to do that. That was the last thing that was on it. I said, I said, did you guys ever write a letter to Global Bank and get it? She goes, no. I said, Ronnie, you'll write the letter immediately, send a copy into the court, file it, da-da-da. We have And so what they did is they said, she did this, she no good, she wouldn't do this, she wouldn't do that, did. And I took and broke down the 3 pages and did a conditional acceptance on pieces of it for everything and ending up with sending the letter in. She gets pulled into court like shortly thereafter. And this time, for the first time, she's dressed in civilian clothes. And I had one of the students, a girl named Juanita from Washington, with me. She goes, because Juanita got to be there for this girl's release. 27 months in, I said, watch this. I said, she's in civilian clothes. She's going home if she don't screw it up. So they start the hearing, and she says, I'm here today as the paramedic. You know, she does one of those. The judge just glosses over it, and the IRS. And then the judge says, IRS, did you receive a letter of filing from the Globe? And they go, yes, you did. Do you do it? And they go, well, it's our thing. Now, when we got the hearing notice, it said that the main prosecutor wasn't going to have to fly in. And all she could say is, this is bull. She should have to fly in for this. I says, there you are again, just a debtor. I says, you know what it means when she doesn't have to fly in? I says, she doesn't want to be there for her humiliating defeat. You're going home, girl.
Not only that, because she did everything right. She's the creditor. Why does the debtor have to show up? She inverted it from the U.S. being the creditor with a charge and her being the debtor because she was arguing, to she's now the creditor in this hearing and the U.S. is the debtor. So why do we need the debtor there? We're not asking the United States to do anything, just dismiss its charges so she could go home.
And this gal is a prolific polemist. This girl is steeped in the art of disputation and argument. Oh, it gets good. She gets to go home. Judge says, I find the contempt purged. She's going home. And she goes home that day. She's thrilled. She gets out about an hour later. I call her 4 hours later because I didn't want to hang around for the thing. I said, you didn't want to call me and let me know you're out finally? Well, I just been busy. Figures, you know, good debtor. I said, now, you better get yourself and get some lessons and understand what you're doing here, because I said, they're going to be coming for you if you don't show that you're a creditor.
To settle the tax case that it was all about to begin with.
So about 2 months later, she says, hey, the prosecutor wants a bunch of money for prosecuting me the last couple of years. I said, well, give it to her. She says, well, I don't know how much they want. I said, well, they sent you a bill and they had all this great formula, $300 an hour times the CPI times the index times 2 on the 3rd week of June. No real number. I said, well, just send back and say, please tell me how much you want.
I'd give her $3 million.
And finally, she goes, they won't give it. I says, yes, they will. So they told her what the bill was. And she goes, the court said I don't have to pay it unless they rule on it. I said, what? I said, you're not paying it? I said, are you out of ink in your pen or what? Take mine. She says, I don't know what. I said, pay it. She says, but the court says I don't have to unless they rule on it. I said, it's been nice knowing you. I said, you're going to love it.
Listen to what the court said. Unless we rule on it. If the court's ruling on it, is it now public or private? Public. She acted like a creditor or a debtor getting out. A creditor. Was that because the public forced her to be a creditor, or was it because she took on the role of creditor in the private? Okay, so now they send her a statement, and the court said she doesn't have to pay it unless we rule on it. When is the public court going to rule on it? When the private party falls back into dishonor and doesn't settle the claim. So by not volunteering to pay it, was the private party going back into the capacity of debtor? Then what happens? The court on the public side rules you have to pay it. Is she going to pay it with asset funds now or liability funds? Liability, because since she's a debtor again, she doesn't have the capacity to use asset funds. So she just screwed herself by not volunteering to help America get rid of its problem.
Then this young lady, does that, and I said, they're coming for you. And she says, well, now the state, they told me that they're, do I want to say anything? They got maybe an indictment. Did I want to speak up? I said, did you pay the bill? She goes, no. I said, you better pay the bill to stop it. They're warning you.
Okay,
I
hang
called
on.
Jack.
Lost contract, right? Letter came from state taxing saying, do we have a tax issue here you'd like to discuss? And she goes, well, as a debtor, I don't want to involve myself in this matter. And so she remained silent. What does silence do? Assumption of fraud. What fraud? Well, you're acting like a debtor. You must be trying to screw the state. So by not responding, she gave them a contractual right to bring a criminal charge against her. So voluntary consent. Why was she charged criminally? She didn't act like a creditor and take care of the problem when it was still on the private side. You beginning to understand how all the problems that happen to your straw man are because you as a living person are not controlling the destiny of your straw man by acting like a creditor.
I called Jack up when she told me that. I said, Jack, listen to this. He goes, that's warning one. Then her daughter and her boyfriend get a couple of subpoenas. I say, Jack, guess what happened now? It's like another month later. He goes, warning two. I says, isn't it cool? And then my dear student calls me up about 3 weeks ago, and I called Jack with the good news.
Hey, we're desperate. They've
We got
charged
an
us.
indictment. They charged us. What should I do? The marshal, I wasn't there when the marshal, I said, you better call them and make an appointment and go get the indictment because they're going to get it on you, and you don't need an arrest warrant out. So she goes and gets it. She's indicted. She says, what do I do? I said, well, set it off. Get some learning because like Jack and I do cases and mentorship programs. You can get a hold of us and help problems. And, we get paid for it, but, you can at least work your problems out, and we'll guide you through it. So here we are telling this young lady, you're doing. Now, I haven't heard from her in like the last couple of weeks. She's content. Her boyfriend now has an attorney. The daughter has an attorney, and she has an attorney. Now, they couldn't afford them, so they've appointed public ones. They didn't indict the boyfriend or the daughter.
The reason they can't afford them is because they're debtors and they don't know they've got this huge resource as an asset funding that they can go out and set the accounts off with.
This gal has a friend in prison that saw her get out and then has called me, and then I'm helping her with some teaching her and stuff, a little pro bono work there we do. So this gal named Joy, she's really a neat gal. And she's an interesting gal, very trying to become educated. And I know she's struggling through it, and she's studying and working her buns off. And she goes, call her Tina. How's Tina doing? I said, well, it sounds like she's going to be indicted. She said, why? I said, well, blah, blah, blah. And she says, what's wrong with her? You got her out of prison. Why doesn't she listen? I said, you know Tina. She goes, that I do. She goes, if it were me, if you got me out, she said, I'd follow every word you said like a dog on a leash. In other words, pay attention. And we show a lot of you one success after another and lots of failures. And we just marvel. And you can sit there and watch and see it do good, in some crazy cases we're going to talk about some. They are so cool, and we brought some of the paperwork, are so neat to see. People report to prison, don't have to. It's like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread to see these beautiful students do the right thing. And then we just marvel and see them go. They argue. They sit there and fight like this gal, Tina. That's not her name, but she just isn't going to do it if it kills her. I guarantee you, she's going for another stay, probably somewhere between 4 to 10 years.
And it's all that come from
Faith and courage and understanding.
Courage. It's interesting because courage from Latin comes from heart, right? It's heartness, having heart, having a firm faith in what you're doing, not coming from the place of fear. Here is a person who took the advice, got out of prison, and then went right back into complacency, being safe. That's the reactionary circle. When you want to be safe, yeah, go ahead and do what you've always done.
What did Ben Franklin say about giving up a little security to gain a little freedom?
Deserves neither.
And will lose both.
And will lose both.
Look at in the wizard.
There's no such thing as being safe. You just think safe, but...
Yeah, no, it feels safe. It ain't safe. You feel safe, but it's just because you're in your old habits. You're in reaction. So she chose to give up. When she was in prison, she was willing to be at risk. She was willing to surrender to her beliefs. She was willing to let go of it, be off of it. Then she gets out, she's right back to being on it. Assumptions, presumptions, being safe, being in resistance to what the remedy was. Literally, telling her, here's your opportunity to set it off. But that requires getting out of my comfort zone. That requires me to be doing something that I feel risk with. It requires me to create. It requires me to be at cause. Would you rather be at cause or at effect? Because when you're at effect, you're just a victim. Victims live down here.
In The Wizard of Oz,
responsible people live up here.
did not Dorothy argue about the liberty of the dog because of the dispute with the neighbor lady, Miss Gulch? And did the argument in Kansas under common law win freedom for Toto? No, the law was condemning. When Dorothy went to state of Kansas, i.e. Oz, off the ground, because that's where the hurricane took her, off the ground, so now she's the sky people, she went into this fictional world in which in that land Dorothy wasn't solving the problem. There were three entities that Dorothy took on. She took on the attribute of the lion, the scarecrow, and the tin man. The lion was the only living entity out of the three. The lion is the equivalent of Dorothy as a natural woman. Why was the metaphor the lion? Because the lion is the symbol of the tribe of Judah, which for the people or children of God, Israel, is your sovereign. So the lion takes on the symbol of your sovereign power under the de jure government. But what was the lion's problem? No courage. If you as a sovereign have no courage, how are you going to resolve your issues? That's why courage is so important and why we spent half of today on those concepts. Because we're going to teach you the facts and the procedures, but you're going to have to maintain both faith that the facts and the procedures are actually more important than what you think by the tradition in your history is your remedy, because that isn't going to work.
You're going to have to give up your old belief system and try something new, because insanity is not for you.
See, when Alice went down into Underland, Alice would not believe that Underland existed. She kept saying to the characters, "This is my nightmare. And I'm going to tell you people how my nightmare is going. You're not going to tell me what's going to happen in Wonderland or Underland. This is my nightmare." And the rest of the characters go, "Well, you believe whatever you want to believe." Finally, Alice looks at the Mad Hatter and said, "This place is real, isn't it?" And the Mad Hatter goes, "Yep. What did they tell you in the Matrix? If you die in the Matrix, you die in reality." If Alice can't handle her problems and resolve their problems in Wonderland, because that's why she's there. Alice kept saying, I am not going to go to battle against this monster. And they kept saying, but it's destiny. You've got to fight the enemy. If you don't fight the enemy, you can never be in control. Alice goes, I'm not going to do that. I'll do everything else, but I'm not going to do that. She didn't get her remedy from Underland until she defeated that monster, which went in her mind is what she had to defeat. It wasn't real, but in her mind it was real. And you have to defeat all of those false assumptions in your mind to get your remedy.
In fact, that's what the Jabberwocky represents, is the false assumptions, presumptions. It's the beast that you've made up the government authority to be. The fictional government is this thing that you give. You give it the power, the authority. You make it this beast that has control of you. It keeps everyone in line. That was the same thing in Underland. Nobody was afraid of the big-headed queen. They were all afraid of this mythical, imaginary beast. And until you defeat the beast, the fear of the beast. What happened when there was no more fear of the beast? No more war, no more tyrant.
Peace reigned in the kingdom.
Just like in your lives, this is new stuff, so you're going to be fearful of it working or not working. But if you can overcome that fear and see that it works, and when you start using it in your daily life on just little things, you start building these concepts that it does work. And much like flying an airplane, don't put me behind the wheel of a jet and I got to put down on an aircraft carrier at night. We're all going to die. That's a fact. Because I don't have the experience and I don't know how to use it. But if I knew how to use it, I wouldn't feel afraid. I feel I could land it, or just like a normal airplane. I could land this. We're all going to be safe. Like driving a car. Once you get used to driving and doing things with it, you're not afraid of a car anymore. You're very comfortable with it because you know how to operate it. These procedures that Brandon, Jack, and I will teach you, once you get them in your minds, they work everywhere. It's just like driving a car. You're going to find that this is going to be a lot of fun.
In fact, that's a perfect analogy, because I feel at the level of experience I have with driving a car, my car is an extension of me. I am fully aware of all four corners of my car. I feel when a car gets close to mine. I don't even have to see it. My awareness is the car. And I operate it with seemingly out any effort. I mean, I'll go 100 miles and be like, oh, wait, was I driving? Because it comes as second nature. And that's really how a lot of how we operate in commerce. Like, it's when we get on the phone and we discuss some of the cases that the people we're coaching are going through, like Gordon will play games with me where he'll throw things at me that these people are facing, or things that have been said to them by judges or letters they've gotten or whatever, and he throws it at me almost, it's like a game to see, well, what am I going to do? And I don't even have to think about it. And when I do the same thing to him, it's not like we have to think, oh, how would I handle? No, it's automatic, like driving a car. It becomes embedded in your being. The creditor. That's why we tell you, don't wait until you're faced with a particular situation to put these practices into motion. That isn't the time to do it. Do it at home. Do it with your family. Do it with your loved ones. Be the creditor. Bring the solutions.
They'll think you're crazy, but that's okay.
No, I don't know if they will. My family doesn't necessarily look at me like I'm crazy
anymore.
This is a part of, and that's one of the things you brought up that's very important. When I got out of prison and I started using this stuff, I had a couple of my friends say, you are a nut. And these are friends of 25, 30 years. And they wanted nothing to do with me after that. Now, after I succeeded, set off the probation, this and that, you think good sense would say, God, wow, that's the craziest thing I ever saw. One of them begrudgingly accepts me as his friend still, but he's not happy about it. I can feel this rift. Yeah, you think, what are you talking about?
You scammed government. We know. That wasn't real. You did something.
That's about what they really think. And the other one won't return my calls, won't talk to me, won't anything.
Where are they operating from? They operate from the beliefs. See, they have such fear that they can't get out of this circle of the past and the beliefs and their assumptions and presumptions. To even be his friend would be being at risk. Right?
So
even being his friend would be choosing, creating, and surrendering to their past, letting go of it, and being able to create something new. See, it's interesting because I see it in all relationships. You make something up about something and you're on it about it, meaning you're attached to it. Like I make up that because you said something to me that now I make up something about the relationship between us and I hold on to it. And we'll keep ourselves separated because you want to be right about your position, I want to be right about my position, and the relationship deteriorates. It never comes back together until someone surrenders and lets go of the need of being right. Then they will have results. Like this relates directly to my personal life. At one point, my dad was very much a guy living down here and being right. And so was I. I'm a perfect mirror image of him. And me, my brother and sister, all being right, being right, being right. And we had totally alienated him to where he was no longer a part of our lives. He had no children. He was going to die a lonely old man. He broke his own cycle of being right. In seeing it in him, it naturally broke that cycle in me. It broke the cycle in my brother and in my sister. And now we have an awesome relationship with my dad, a relationship we may have never had if we'd have stuck on it about being right about something.
Brandon's dad has gotten into the swing of it, but one of the things I'm going to warn you, you're going to have friends and family that are going to be very offended that you do this stuff. So if you're going to try and run a popularity contest, your neighbors, friends, you're not going to relate with them anymore. Like I said, my daughter's alienated. She can't deal with these dumb boyfriends anymore, which is nice. But where Brandon's going, don't expect this to be an easy road. It's not a hard road, but it's not an easy road. So.
Oh yeah, now I'm not saying it'll be easy because in fact, easy's down here. Easy's in being safe and doing things the way we've always done them.
Now down there means one thing. Misery likes company. And if you don't know yourself, you just look at it. If the whole herd feels like we're doing this, then we're not wrong. And it's a weird psychological effect that I see. What are you doing just because everybody's like lemmings running off the cliff going into this? Don't you understand what's going to happen? Here's democracy, here's republics. We give this definition from the military training manual, and the rest that says always ends this way. And we ask them, that's where you're going. Well, I'm not changing. Wow. My ex is married to this really neat guy, and I've done about 3 major things for them. And they've seen me not have to do supervised release, get to do what I want. They still don't want anything to do with this stuff. It's an anathema. It's an enemy to them. They just go, they get their crosses and silver and garlic out every time I come over. I'm being a little facetious. And they're get some. But it's the wildest thing you ever saw.
But be mindful that there's nothing wrong with anybody. You don't need to fix anybody. See, I know because I've been doing this stuff for years, okay? And I know that a tendency of mine was to put my beliefs on others. I want you to be enlightened like me because you're broken. And I'm here to fix you. And that will definitely alienate people in your life.
You're charging your brother.
Accept them for who they are and what they are.
They're entitled to be better.
Don't make them wrong. Don't make judgments on them for not being or seeing things the way you see them. Because when you're just accepting of them the way that they are, not imposing your will and beliefs upon them, well, then now you can step back and you can be in relationship because you're not necessarily trying to impose where you're coming from on anyone else. You choose to not be a slave. That's fine. Choose not to be a slave. But don't force your brothers not to be slaves.
And how long do you think it's going to take them to see you start realizing remedy and benefits for things? Like I had the 3 photo tickets come in the mail. So my cars, that one was my son did, and one was another, and I took care of them and sent them in. And they vaporized. And I said, what do you think of that? And the kids are just, it isn't going to take you long to start exercising your sovereignty, your authority, before people are going to say, I want a piece of that action.
And when you're coming from that place, you're going to naturally draw the people towards you who are looking for what you have. And you're going to raise the vibration and awareness of those around you when you're not forcing it on them. When you're just always coming from a place of happiness, joyfulness, love, acceptance, people may be a little resistant to it at first, but if you're not holding them in a box that they're wrong for not being the way that you are, they'll naturally raise up with you in their awareness and consciousness. All of a sudden, the people who 6 months ago you were trying to force these ideas on them, now you're not doing any of that, but being in your presence and seeing how you are and how you interact, now they're asking you questions about it and wanting to hear about it because they see it in you. There's growth. Growth happens up here. Maintenance happens down here. You want to be the same? How many people came because they want to be the same and want to have things the same as they are? So if you want everything to be the same and you want things to be the way they've always been, that's fine. You can live in reaction. You can live projecting from your past, or start choosing and creating something different by not being in reaction. Break up the reaction. Identify and make a distinction of the story of the neutral event. Identify the neutral event. There's an IRS agent at my door. That's a neutral event. The story, I'm in trouble, I've done something wrong, I'm going to jail, all that is going to mess you up. And in that, are you being present? No, you're coming out of the past. If you can't be present, how are you going to ask the questions when they ask you questions? It's not about memorizing the things that Gordon and Jack and myself tell you about our experience. Don't memorize what we've done, because I'm the best when I'm just like, now. I'm not basing it on my past. I'm not, oh yeah, what was the definition of that word? Right? I'm just being now, and whatever comes out of them, I'm just going to be natural with what comes out of me, because I'm coming from a space of I don't know anything. I don't need to be right about anything. I'm about creating solutions and possibilities. And you know how to create unlimited possibilities?
What we tell
Questions.
You in this, there's only going to be 375,000 answers to each question. It's only really about that's it. So he's telling you that you can ease up. Wait till you hear some of what some of our students have said and done. And we got one who's going to tell you a story.
He told me a story a couple weeks ago about one of the students, and it was a student he's actually brand new to this stuff. This is what was so mind-blowing about it. It's not someone who's been studying this stuff for years. He's been around this stuff for weeks. And he told me about this gentleman's response and how he handled himself in court. And it sounded like I heard my words in there that I've shared with people about things that I've said. I heard some of Gordon's words in there. But in reality, it was something he had created. It wasn't a reaction or a response that me and Gordon had word for word. It wasn't like he had memorized a series of responses. He had just taken in enough that it was there in him, it lived in him, and being present and in that moment with the judge, no matter what the judge said, it naturally came out of him. Because he had the foundation. We'll give you the foundation, but don't be attached to it being a certain way. Because I can tell you with certainty, it's never the same. None of your experiences will ever be an image of my experiences, or Gordon's experiences, or Jack's experiences. They will always be different. And so you can't rely on a series of memorized responses or paperwork. Believe that, oh, the paperwork that Gordon used in this case is going to work for me because I got the same kind of case. Wrong. Because it's not the paperwork that gets the remedy. So keep this in mind, that in reality, what we're seeking, at least for me, what I'm seeking to be is fully present in every moment, in full awareness, awake, loving, abundant. That's my come from. Like when I get pulled over, I don't necessarily do the same things he does. I haven't had a driver's license in 8 years, been pulled over 5 times. Not once have I even gotten a ticket. Not to say that I didn't feel this when the lights went on behind me. Okay? When you see those red and blues, it's like, ah! Right? That was the first reaction. But immediately I'm like, oh, sweet. A public servant wants a little bit of my time.
Is this guy sick
What an
or what?
opportunity. And I pulled up, like this just happened. I was driving to New Mexico maybe a month ago, 2 months ago. And again, I don't have a driver's license. The lights go on behind me. First reaction, I'm going to jail, right? That was my first reaction. That's, when you don't have a driver's license, that's my first reaction. But I let go of it immediately. Before I even started turning my turn signal on to go, I'm like, oh, okay. That's my story, right? The neutral event is there's a dude behind me in an emergency vehicle of some kind with his lights on. That's the neutral event. So I'm going to pull over. Pull over, gets out. He comes up, you got a driver's license? I said, no. I said, but my come from is this is a person who's seeking to do his job, and he wants really just to feel safe with knowing who I am.
You better tell the whole story because everybody's interested.
Okay.
So.
Well, he basically, he says, do you have a driver's license? I said, no. I go, I have a passport. He goes, oh, that'll be fine. Mind you, it has now become a non-issue that I'm driving down the road without a driver's license. He didn't care. He then says, you know why I pulled you over? I said, no. I really, at that point, I didn't because I was driving maybe 5 miles, 10 max over the speed limit, and they usually don't pull you over for that on the freeway. And he says, well, it was because you were driving in the left lane. I'm like, and? Because I'm from California, and in California, you're allowed to drive in the left lane on the freeway. But I guess in Arizona, it's for emergency vehicles and passing only. And I wasn't passing, I was just cruising. Left lane. We proceeded to have a 45-minute conversation on the side of the road. Like, he was interested in what I did. I was interested in what he did. He was telling me stories about things that he's, come across on the freeway for 45 minutes. Mind you, didn't care that I didn't have a driver's license. Didn't want to search my car. None of that. Because my come from before he even got up to the window was appreciation of who he was and what he does. Love for him and what he does. I mean, whenever I see any kind of a public servant, I marvel. Wow, they put themselves at risk every day to try to make a better community because I believe wholeheartedly that every man, woman, and child on this planet does everything in their power to be the best people that they think they can be. Even Hitler thought he was doing something good. His intention wasn't to, I'm going to screw people. I'm going to be evil. No, his intention was he thought he was doing something good. And that's how all people are. So yeah, you may come across a cop who kind of acts like a dick, in your opinion, right? Because that's just the story. It's a neutral event. And I'm making up that he's just a prick. But in fact, it may be that morning he lost a loved one, and he's not in the greatest mood. But we so often make up the stories of the neutral events, and then we believe our stories to be the truth. That this is what's so. And when you buy into your own story, you will manifest it. So if I'd have bought into my story that when the lights went on behind me, I'm going to jail, and I was resistant, and came from a sense of entitlement and righteousness, and he's wrong and I'm right. When he asked me for a driver's license, I said, why do you need to see it? Coming from that kind of an attitude. And then his story is, oh, he's got something to hide, right? And now we're at conflict. If I'd have created an adversary in him, that's exactly what I would have had. And I probably would have ended up in jail.
You got a driver's license? That's the offer. I've got a passport, counteroffer. Well, I'll take that.
Because my presumption was he just wanted some kind of identifying document. See, as far as I'm concerned, I don't need a license to drive. So I presumed he was looking for an identifying document. I didn't presume...
Who was behind the wheel, the Brandon or the other Brandon? See, the story in his mind is the other Brandon is behind the wheel who needs a license. But that's his story until the Brandon says, can you take a passport?
So we're actually a little over time. We're going to take our lunch. Yeah, we're only a half hour over. So we'll do an hour and a half lunch. Sound good? I usually do 2 hours, but we kind of ran a half hour over. So we'll go till 2:30.